Right, hello everyone. Welcome back to our trawl through Dr. Dave Regis's suggested openings repertoire. And we're nearly at the end of the good doctor's suggestions for playing the white pieces. And then, of course, we'll start on what he recommends for black. And this video and the next couple are going to be based on the modern stroke Pirc opening for black, which is perfectly playable, by the way. But of course, we're looking at things from the white point of view currently in this series, and so there's going to be a few squishings, no doubt. I think 3 videos, 6 games in each, because the good doctor gives us 18 games with this setup. So let's get cracking. The first one, we don't have names, but it's a very short game. Absolutely fine, nothing wrong with this. D6, bishop to C4. Looks very familiar. How many have we seen in these openings videos where the good doctor sets up like this? Now in this game, you can see it's perfectly level. Black should just play probably, no, not that. That, knight to F6 and then get castle. But in our game, knight to D7 is played first. And this is a horrible mistake. If you'd like to work out why it's a horrible mistake, press pause now. Otherwise, I'll carry on in 3, 2, and 1. That's a horrible mistake because bishop takes F7 check. What are you going to do? Well, you shouldn't really take the bishop, but you're in all kinds of trouble because you've just lost a pawn. I mean, at the very least, white just can move the bishop out. I expect there's probably better things than that if white can find an improvement, but you've at least lost a pawn and the right to castle, so that's not good. But if you take the bishop, you run into knight here check, king here, and queen F3 is actually mate, which is quite funny because the knight's protected, you can't take it. This square is guarded by the pawn and this square is guarded by the knight, so that's no good. And if you go here, you run into knight E6 check, which you get out of check and then lose your queen, so that's no good. And if you go here, you actually get to smothered mate the queen. You're still attacking the queen, but look, she's blocked in by all her own colleagues, and so you just win a queen. So yeah, that's a pretty painful way to start. But like I say, if in this position black just plays knight F6 and then gets castled, oops, don't do that because that's cheating. Castled is that square. Then we're looking at a pretty level game. Okay, so first game down. Our second one is Byrne against Owen, Liverpool 1874. Wow, I wonder if that's Byrne and Owen, the two well-known English masters from the time. Judging from a couple of the moves, maybe not, or I don't know, maybe they were playing blitz or something, but I don't know. Anyway, let's have a look. So E4, D6, D4, knight F6, knight to C3 is played, G6, and bishop to E3, bishop to G7, bishop to E2, castles from black. So this is all perfectly fine, perfectly level. And then white starts something a bit speculative, H4. My guess is that these days black would almost automatically reply with H5, but okay, the position's fine. Knight C6. And now white starts getting a bit risky with H5. So the idea is to swap the pawn and then you've got a rook directly pointing at the enemy king. Computer's not particularly scared, says basically dead level, give or take. E5 from black, pawn takes, and computer still perfectly level. F pawn takes, and knight to F3. Knight to G4 from black, looking, I presume, to swap off this bishop. Bishop to C4 check, king goes to the corner. Knight to G5. And that's a nasty threat because rook takes here is actually mate because the bishop's here, but it's not that nasty a threat because it's -3. Now, I can tell you that if black just plays H6 here and blocks the possibility of rook H7, they're just a queen for 2 pieces up, and after a little bit of untangling should win the game. But in our game, black didn't do that. Black blocked with the bishop. Backwards protection from the knight, and that just doesn't work. I mean, it's still level, but it doesn't work as well as H6, which should be winning the game. White goes in now for a crazy queen sacrifice. Queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes here, once again renewing the threat of checkmate. And in the game, black played king to G7, which is a horrible mistake because it's mate in 2 after rook here. Remember, the rook's protected. The only legal move is this, and knight d5 is actually mate. So the 2 knights guard these 2 squares, the pawn guards this, and the rook guards these 2. 3, actually, it's that one as well. Now, I have to tell you, of course, this didn't have to happen. In this position, what actually should happen is black should simply be prepared to give the queen back. So queen to here, and you can see it's basically a level game, but after takes, perhaps pawn takes, perhaps knight takes, perhaps retreat the bishop, you're looking at a pretty even game. Yeah, the material's a bit weird, but as you can see, you know, that's basically level. But yeah, quite a nice checkmate with the king in the middle of the board and the 2 knights anyway. Okay, our third game is Bouvier against Laurent. Not 2 players that I know, but from 2001 in Crayon. And we've got e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight to c3, g6, bishop to e3, and c6. Queen to d2 is played, b5 is played. Just keep a note on this, still relatively level, nothing too dramatic going on. Move 6, g3, knight bd7, and then slightly curiously, having just played g3, white plays g4. And the computer clearly not a fan of this, because it just looks like a waste of a move. But anyway, I don't think this is grandmaster level chess. I don't think so anyway. So I could be wrong. h5, g5, knight to h7, d5, definite space advantage for white, but whether they can do anything with it, who knows? Computer thinks it's still pretty level at this point. Takes, and e6. Now, I have to tell you, after white's next move, black resigned the game. So if you want to hit pause, please do. Otherwise, I will show you the correct next move, or the next white move, in 3, 2, 1. And it's a fork of a sort, but it's a fork against a square and a piece. And the move is queen to c3. And why is this a problem? Well, first of all, you're threatening the undefended rook. But if black moves the rook, which seems logical enough, you walk into knight here, check. You can't play queen takes because the queen is defending this square. Well, you could, but it'd be a bit rubbish. So after you get out of check, you've just lost a whole rook anyway. So yeah, I mean, it looked all very fine and well and dandy, and then it suddenly wasn't. I think if we go to this position, and yeah, the position's actually dead level. What's the computer recommending? Probably bishop g7, I guess. Yeah, okay, there we go. So bishop g7 instead, and then you haven't got this problem. Oh, that's the worst 2 arrows I've ever drawn in my life. Oh my God, what's going on here? I've just completely lost control of the mouse. Yeah, so you've solved all the problems on this diagonal now. So, okay, fine, game's pretty level. Yeah, don't know what happened to my arrows there, but still. Right, our fourth game today, we have got Candiola and Enserdorfer in Stockerau, 1992. So I can't say again that I know these 2 players, so let's see what they produce for us. So e4, d6, d4, knight f6. Oh, we'll turn the lines off. Knight to c3 and g6. Bishop to e3, bishop to g7. All very well and good. Knight to f3, knight to c6. Nothing untoward so far. h3, just to stop the bishop with any annoying ideas, or to stop the knight with any annoying ideas. Castles from black. Queen d2. You'll often be able to do this castle queenside idea, throw pawns up the board. The other thing about this is sometimes you can try to swap off the fianchetto bishop and leave black with weak dark squares around the king. So queen d2, queen d7. Oh, and sure enough, bishop to h6 is played. Knight to e8. Bishop takes, knight takes, and I wonder if these are going to turn out to be weak squares. I haven't seen this game yet. I'm just doing it as live, reading the book with you as I go along. Castles from white, e6 from black. Definitely computers saying a bit of an advantage to white here, presumably extra space in the middle of the board because of the big center. And also maybe it doesn't like these black squares around the enemy king. But anyway, so castles e6, queen h6. Okay, fine. Yeah, okay. Still a slight advantage to white. And now black plays knight to b4. And this isn't very good, obviously, because after knight g5, black's toast. In fact, I'm struggling to see how black doesn't just get checkmated. Oh, well, I suppose you have to move the rook. Let's just put the lines on. Is it a rook move? Yeah, you have to move the rook across, and it's still going to be +9 anyway. Because queen takes h7 must be one of the winning moves. Yeah, it is. King to f8. And yeah, this is not very pleasant at all. Just following the computer moves through. Ouch. Yeah. +10. I'll let you work out the variations yourself, but you can see it's pretty bad news. If we just go back to this position, of course, black shouldn't be playing knight b4. They should be playing something to stop the white knight coming here. So f6 with a slight advantage to white, but nothing overly dramatic. After bishop h6, by the way, black shouldn't be retreating the knight. Black should just be playing moves like, I'm guessing, e5 is probably up there somewhere. Yeah. So, okay, yeah, black lost, but it's not an unplayable opening, not by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, we have 2 more to go for this video, and we are in 1999, and we have the Brazilian Under-20s Championship, no less. Tamasiro against Geraldini. Okay, and black resigns in this one on move 12. So let's see how the game goes. So e4 and d6, d4 and knight f6. Oops, let's turn the lines off for the time being. Knight to c3 and g6. Bishop to e3, bishop to g7, knight to f3 and castle, so pretty standard stuff. Bishop to c4, knight b to d7, nothing untoward or dramatic so far. h3, c6, and e5 from white. White thinks it's time to go for it in the center of the board. Computer says pretty level position. Pawn takes, and knight to e8. Okay, now my chess brain is telling me that white ought to just play this and crush up the black, and they do. Yeah, they do. May not be the best move, but instinctively the idea of just then having these horrible doubled isolated pawns just looks good. And yeah, computer says slight advantage to white. Now, he doesn't really want to play pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, because you've just got this horrible, just revolting position. So what was played in the game? Well, knight to e5 was played in the game. Pawn takes check, king here to h8, and of course that loses a queen, which is a bit of a problem. Yeah, the queen's unprotected, so you can't move this knight. This knight's pinned. So what have you actually got to do? Well, presumably you've got to play here. And I'm just going to cheat a little bit and use the computer, but I assume bishop takes e6, king to h8, and yeah, I was going to say knight g5, and then knight here looks pretty unpleasant. Yeah, not very nice at all. Have we got an improvement for black somewhere after white plays e5? Yeah, absolutely. Look at that. So black shouldn't be going with pawn takes pawn. Computer says knight to d5 is actually pretty safe and pretty level. Okay, so it's amazing really what can go wrong very quickly in a game of chess if you just don't quite get it right. Right, we've got one more for this episode. We've got Bourne against Johnson. It's a British championship by the looks of it in Telford in Britain in 2005, and black resigns again on move 12. So we've got a slightly different move order here. d4 was first in this game. Then d6, and then white plays e4. So nothing really has changed. Oops, turn the lines off. Knight to f6, knight to c3, g6, bishop to e3, bishop to g7. Seen this a few times. Queen to d2. There's that idea again. Castles from black. And immediately bishop h6, so white's not messing around here. c6, and now h4. And of course, with this bishop here, black can't do this. He can't block the h-pawn. So bishop takes from black is interesting. Queen takes. Computer's saying bit of an advantage to white, but not overwhelmingly so. It's not, it's still relatively level, nothing dramatic. Queen a5 from black. Okay. And here comes white with h5. So an interesting idea. It's obviously a pawn sacrifice, but the idea is once this pawn isn't here, the rook and the queen will be extremely dangerous together. So knight takes, remember the queen is defending in this direction as well, but knight takes just doesn't do the trick. Look at where the bar's gone. White plays knight to f3 with the threat of knight g5 and then queen takes mate. So black plays f6 to stop the knight coming in. But that, of course, opens up this diagonal. So bishop to c4 check is played. And now e6 blocking the check. What's white's next move? If you want to have a quick look, it forced black to resign in the game. Feel free to press pause. Otherwise, I will carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And at this point in the game, white simply played g4. You have a pinned piece. It's pinned against queen takes h7 mate. And if you move the knight, you lose, well, because you're getting checkmated or crushed in the middle of the board. I mean, you could probably play knight g7, but it's hardly very attractive. And if you leave the knight there, then pawn takes is just going to be brutal. Let's just see, is it? It's not even suggesting knight to g7. It's actually saying put the queen back and just lose the knight. What happens after this? Oh, wow. We don't even play queen takes h7. Look, although it's very good. Plus 10. It actually just wants to go e5, the computer, and break the position. But queen takes h7 is plus 10, for heaven's sake. I mean, yeah. We don't want to be getting into that. So, okay, that was all very, very good. But as ever, in the interests of balance, at this point where black play queen a5, computer's saying actually knight g4, and there's a slight advantage to white, but nothing overly dramatic in this position. What else? Just have a little look. Yeah, bishop takes h6. It's okay. It's not too bad, is it? And again, in this position, still pretty level. So yeah, not too bad for black, but if they're not careful, they can get quite quickly squished. Okay, that's our first 6 games, looking at some early white victories in the Pirc and the Modern. I will be back fairly soon with 6 more. Thanks for watching.